morning, everybody, and welcome to a new edition of Right Align with Kieron Lewis, based in London. Right, Kieron?
Indeed, South London, yeah.
Lovely. While we're getting going, Kieron, and I always like to do this at the start, I think it's really interesting to understand individual sort of stories and where all their creativity came from. If you can take us back to when design first played a part, or creative industries or any form of creativity first played a part in your life, and then the steps that led you then to creative education and stepping into the world as a professional, that'd be fantastic.
Right, trip down memory lane. So we're going back to even college, well, even school days. I mean, I was one of those kids who I love comic books growing up, and it's funny. I watched a few of the Right Line talks. Everyone kind of touches on that a lot, but I, very much in that realm where I used to collect a lot of comic books, mainly The Simpsons. I would trace a lot. I would draw my sort of school a lot, which the teachers didn't really appreciate, but I just did that. Just loved drawing cartoons, characters, doing comic book styles. Went to college after school, and I did graphic design in Surrey, which did a bit of life drawing as well, a bit of animation, and then went to uni. But I actually, before doing graphic design, I was actually doing video game design. I'm a big bit of a gamer as well, and that was kind of my first year of uni, and I took me a year to realize it wasn't really for me, if I'm really honest, which is why I changed unis. But to be fair, I mean, that year I did life drawing, 3ds Max, a bit of graphic design as well, but it wasn't really my thing. My thing is graphic design, which is obviously what I'm doing now. So changed paths slightly to a different university, went to Winchester and got my degree there in graphic arts, studying marketing and branding. And then whilst at uni, I mean, for me, it was more about the uni experience. Obviously, you've got the academic side of it, but also, living out of home for myself for the first time and, meeting new people, different cultures. So that was a good experience in itself. And as a result, I ended up working with a lot of friends whilst at uni, separate to my uni degree as well. So a lot of self-directed collaborations, which I did by my first year at uni, going into third year. And that kind of helped me, I guess, kind of when I graduated as well, because obviously my first job was actually an advertising agency, which I was fortunate to work at. And that happened via doing work experience in my second year of uni. So when I graduated, they offered me a full-time junior role, and I was quite fortunate to kind of go straight from uni into a junior role. But I always do think a lot of the work I did whilst at uni, the self-directed, the collaboration, that kind of fed in to, my junior role and to kind of roles I've got up right until now. And yeah, I mean, I've done my CV. If you looked at my CV now, there is a bit of job hopping. I'm not going to deny that. And I think it was more because trying to find what I really want to be doing. I mean, I've always wanted to go freelance. I'll put that out there. And, 8 years on now, I'm doing freelance. But it took me a long, long time to have confidence to want to take that leap of doing graphic to do freelance. Mainly because I was always conscious of, you have a quiet month, things go wrong. What is the downs, the pros and the cons. And then, yeah, I mean, since then, yeah, a few advertising agencies, a few editorial design agencies, and then now I'm a freelance graphic designer, and I have been since the start of this year. So,
That's amazing. That sounds very smooth.
No, I'll make it sound smooth.
A lot of the people I speak to, it's very up and down and very not sure where they were going. Not even things like graphics. Not even a lot of people say that they didn't really understand what that meant. They just think going through things like childhood through comic books and movies and cartoons. People then add the two together when they get older and go, "Oh, that's what it was." It's that understanding. But so when you went to, so you did graphics so that was a dedicated course for graphics at college. Because, excuse my ignorance, when I was starting out, it was that long ago, we didn't really have graphics courses. It was just art and art history and photography. So there was a dedicated courses then to...
Yeah, it was a beta art and design college. It was based in, so I'm originally from South London, Brixton, and then I moved when I was 15, 16, so just before college, to Surrey, Red Hill, and East Surrey College is where my college is at. And it's, again, we had, fine artists there. They had other different roles as well, but primarily had an art block dedicated. So for me, it was amazing because, yeah, you meet all walks of life in college. It was a 2-year course. The life drawing was fun as well. That was a different experience as well. Yeah, very hands-on. So that's cool.
Was that experience strange in any way, going from an area into college where you then become around people that you didn't know for the first time? How did that?
Do you know what? I don't think I'm that shy person, so I like meeting new people in general. I think one thing that took me by a bit of a shock was perhaps the culture shock, because I mean, like I said, I grew up in Brixton. I went to school in Tooting. You know, it's predominantly, you know, black and Asian. You know, and going to say Surrey, Red Hill, predominantly white. That was a contrast for me to you know to kind of adjust to. But in terms of my experience, you know, it was great because I met a lot of people, and I actually think that led me up to how I'm at now, in a sense where, you know, being in a room with certain types of people, understanding the different cultures, going from say Brixton to say Surrey to even Winchester, where my uni's at, which you couldn't go from any more the spectrum from Winchester to say Brixton. It feels like, you know, a bit like EastEnders meets like, I don't know, the thing, but it's just, yeah, I think for me, I've understand from a very early age how to kind of navigate through that space of different types of people in a different surrounding and setting. So so for me, I kind of enjoyed the experience of meeting different people.
Yeah, because I think that for me that was a big eye opener in terms of just who you were around, you know, because you've gone from such a long time with building friendships at school to then
Yeah,
that being disconnected, and then you know in amongst the different age range, different sort of cultural group, which is I think was fantastic for creative people because it sort of really opens your eyes to a lot of different worlds and perspectives. So what was you went then to uni, you then swapped university to do graphics and marketing and branding. I'm really interested in this idea of you doing self, you know, created collaborations. Was that just because you're curious and you wanted to explore different, you know, ways of working, how to work with other people, or was that pushed? You know, was that part of the university idea to make that happen between you students?
not at all. I think, do you know what it is? I've always been, even from school days, I like to just do things. I don't like being told what to do. I don't know what that makes me sound like a person, but I like to just kind of do things for either for fun or because I have a real eagerness to want to do it. And I think uni was interesting because obviously you have set briefs given by the lecturers, and they were great, and I really enjoyed that experience. But separate to that, I kind of wanted to just work on stuff because just for the curiosity of it as well. But also I lived with two guys I should say, and that was kind of our first introduction into self-directed projects. So we worked on a magazine called Plog, which myself and three other guys, and two of them I lived with as well. So that kind of fed in quite nice. We lived together as well. You know, we were first year of Freshers Week. I'll keep it clean. It was a good time, but I think it was more because you're able to work with people, but also have a drink with them, be social with them. That kind of, it felt just organic. It didn't feel too staged. It didn't feel like, you know, obviously we had deadlines to try and to do projects and to you know, to set goals, but I think it just felt like a good thing to do separate to our uni degree as well. And what was quite nice was the things that we made, and a magazine in particular that we made called Plog Magazine, which is a mixture of paper and blogging, so featuring graduate and student artwork, was that the lecturers could see what we were doing, and they, you know, helped towards funding the university, and they would you know, give us feedback on the design that we were kind of creating. And I kind of feel like as we kind of went into first year to second year to third year, because they could see what we were doing, something separate to our uni degree, it just made life a bit easier in terms of having that connection with the lecturers. I think they can see who we are, they can see we're generally interested in this field, and yeah, we vibed really well. And I've done a lot of talks, kind of gone back to my uni now recently actually, which is quite nice because we kind of touched on, do you remember those days when we had our first year of uni? And I mean, it's 8 years ago now we're talking, so, but it's still nice that we've got that kind of connection going back.
It sounds amazingly proactive. In all due respect to students, you get a bit of a bad rep for being notoriously lazy, which is probably a lazy cliche, really, from the people that say it most of the time. But it's sometimes you don't hear of people doing that, and I've never really experienced many people of that age doing that. So that's not. It seems like there was something naturally in you then to, you know, to lead you towards sort of like going freelance, because it takes a lot of time, dedication, passion, hard work, all of those personal traits to instigate that type of lifestyle, doesn't it? You know, you can't just sit around and hoping it comes to you.
So, you know, just on that, it's funny because I'm going a little bit further, but even so, when you're in secondary school, we have like work experience placement, which is only, we were going really back a long time. I think it's only a week, maybe 2 weeks max. And I always remember, so this was before I wanted to know I wanted to be a graphic designer or whatever. My mum, she works as a solicitor, and she's very on it, very proactive. And I think maybe I have a bit of traces of that element from my mum. And I remember saying to her, you know, I'd love to do maybe some design, but I don't really know. And I remember having to sit down, and before even really emails, I had to send letters out to so many different agencies, seeing if they would maybe give me like a week experience. And I ended up doing a 1 week experience in near Farringdon. I couldn't remember the name of the agency because we're going back years. And we worked on like Quark Express, like we're talking years. But I remember thinking to myself, that effort that my mum kind of ingrained in me from young, of like, if you want something, just have to, you can send out 50 things and then 2 reply gets back. From very early, my brain has been programmed in that way. So maybe subconsciously kind of had that still through uni. And I mean, I have it now, but I think it's more, it goes back to even from family days and how they kind of how they sort of see themselves in the working world. So I feel like it's kind of an organic thing, as maybe from family days. I don't know.
Yeah, but I think those traits have always been there, aren't they? That you have to go and seize the opportunities. You have to sort of try and make your own look. You've got to do a lot of this dirty work that not many people see because of things like social media, where it's all perfectly polished and been designed or been created just to fit in a square on Instagram or something. I mean, it's sort of like this characteristic has been born where it'll just come to you if you're good enough. It just work like that. You've got to work damn hard to make it happen, haven't you? And that's by doing something like that. I mean, creating a magazine, I've been involved in magazines myself, and they seem simple from the outside, and when you pick one up and skip through it, it's just a few words and pictures, isn't it? But they're damn hard to make, aren't they? They're put together. So that's what I mean. From a student's perspective, though, in the first year, you could have just sort of sat in a pub and done nothing, couldn't you?
We kind of did, to be fair. Anyway, what's interesting, because I don't want to give off that impression like from first year of uni, we had like a boardroom, like almost apprentice stuff. I mean, bearing in mind, because we were first years as well, we would have, I remember our kitchen being covered with just spreads of different examples. And, we sat at a pub, we had pub lunch, and we would draw things out. So that's what made it feel natural, because it wasn't, obviously now when you're in the working world, freelance, it's a little bit different, more professional. But I think because we were so young and maybe even naive to an extent, we just had fun with it. And I think that I still have that element of fun when I design that. I have to, because otherwise I go mental if I don't.
Yeah, no, that's really important though, isn't it? We've got a job to do, but you've got to keep your sanity, haven't you? You've got to do what it is that put you in that happy place. And I think for most people, fun is always a big on, high on that criteria, isn't it? Of keeping yourself creative and energetic and enthusiastic is really important, because it's so hard. It's so easy, to lose some of that and see it as just churning out work for companies, isn't it? So when you so it's in your second year that you did a work experience at an ad agency that then led to your first role. Yeah. How did that sort of come about then? Was that so they were just impressed with what you were doing, or did you then just keep on speaking to those before you finish university, just keep in touch and that building?
Well, I don't want to give. I would love to say I had maybe some groundbreaking designs and I just got flown out. It was my good friend's dad who is he's one of the directors at the company. So I mean, and again, people who it definitely plays a part, and I kind of utilized that. So I remember saying to my mate, her name's Casey in Essex, and I was saying to her, obviously I would love to do some work experience, and they're based in Barbican. They're called Love Europe. And when I was in my second year of uni, I remember going back there, and I did some, like I said, some freelance, some work experience there, and it was cool because I was super nervous, crikey. Like, obviously, I've never been in the working, barring when I was, really young, for work experience for like 1 week, which doesn't really count. This was my first insight into seeing how pictures are done, working with different programs, deadlines. And I remember doing a little bit of work for Nestle. So we had back then it was digital banners. So using Flash, that was it, Flash. So we used to use Flash Player, and yeah, it was cool. It was intense, but I remember learning so much in that period. So then when I graduated, got offered the full-time junior role, I felt a bit comfortable because I know the guys there already. They know me. The work was fairly similar, but obviously a bit more intense, had a bit more responsibility. But I didn't feel like I was thrown completely in the deep end, because I had that second year which kind of softened it a bit.
Yeah. Anything that you think from the transition from uni into working life could be improved in terms of what you're taught or the opportunities that you're given? Because what you've just mentioned there, pitches, deadlines, clients, that's quite a repetitive rhetoric that I hear with people through this process. And with all of these talks, I've always asked people to go back to that phase, because I find it really interesting to see different, or to hear other people's individual experiences. And however individual they are, those sort of 3 criteria seem to crop up a lot. Is that you're thrown into the furnace, really, at the coal face, and it's, oh blimey, we've got to do this within 20 minutes. Yeah. For a really shouty client who wants it, who's demanding it's done now because it's got to go live on an international website somewhere. I mean, you're raising the game in terms of the pressure stakes quite high there. Is there anything, and I'm not sort of trying to get you to sort of say that the university you went to wasn't adequate, because I think it goes across the board, is that, you know, it's quite a difficult balance, isn't it, to sort of go from understanding the software and the programs and the craft and all the techniques to then working on clients, is working with clients is two very polar opposites. But do you think there's anything that could be done to sort of bridge that gap a little bit?
That's interesting. I mean, so I do give a lot of talks at universities now as a result, and I always find, to answer that question, is the questions that I get asked by, say, students or you know, third years, when they say, you know, I've got, you know, I want to get into say editorial design, for example, which I do now. How do I kind of get into it? And I feel with lecturers, I mean, my lecturers are great, and they were really good, and they were very hands-on as well. They did a lot of stuff outside of the uni work, which is what I really respected as well. I do think it's difficult to give that full round experience of advice, because unless they're really in it themselves, they won't actually know. I think the one thing I wish I was taught a bit more was perhaps the financial side of things. I mean, it depends if you want to go freelance or not. Obviously, I'm freelance now, but I think from when I was at uni, perhaps the idea of going freelance, you have to be a lot older and a lot more experienced and to do freelance, which, you know, makes sense to an extent. But I feel it's not impossible now, especially in this current climate, if you graduate, if you were, say, proactive in first, second year, or you've got a fairly good network, you could go freelance when you graduated. There's no reason why you couldn't. But my brain told me from a young age, I probably couldn't. I need to be working for at least, 5 years before I can go. So maybe making it to a point where lecturers could show elements of, if you want to go freelance, which a lot of young creatives do, let's be honest, because you want control of your life, it's that element as well. Yeah. Maybe there could be talks based on that, or having people come in and for example, next week I'm giving a talk at Fell Better Talk, which touches on the failures of things that went wrong rather than just the shiny things, which maybe when I had lecturers and give talks and guest speakers, it was all good showing the polished work and the great, you know, kind of fairly straightforward path to get to where you are now. But what's the bumps and the curves and the things that went bad? Maybe knowing those stuff more and being transparent on it will just make life a bit easier for those kind of wanted to come up, because, you know, we're all human and we all have mistakes, but we just don't show it much.
Yeah, I think I've found when I've seen things like that, very rarely, I find them really, really empowering, because they're sort of loaded with a lot of humour as well, because you can laugh about it now. You know, once you've sort of had 50 logos rejected, once you've had, you know, like print, you know, 50,000 print run come back with too many spelling mistakes to go live, you know, those sort of things, you laugh about it now. At the time, it was the end of the world. And I heard or read a great article on LinkedIn about teaching more students about design, or especially freelance, being a business. Like they said about the financial things, you know, the HMRC, the tax, or you know, all the legal sort of side of things, as opposed to maybe it's still being deemed as a bit of a pastime or a bit of something that you do before you get a proper job. So, you know, so it's a really interesting conversation, though, isn't it, to talk about, you know, the serious sort of side of things, as opposed to maybe it all being about creating and making things look lovely. It's you know, there's a lot deeper than that. So you jumped around at a few jobs from then until where you're at now. Is that to experience different types of agencies or work, or was that just through scenarios? That was through being let go? Was there some really lows in that, or was that just personal?
You know what? I love doing these talks now, because I feel like I can just be honest now and just be, you know, obviously I'm freelance. I've got a fairly good sense of clients I work with. I think, and what I mean by be honest is that there's a lot of things that went wrong. You know, when I graduated, I got offered that full time, which was great. But from then onwards to, say, 5 years after graduating, it was a bit tricky. So I was made redundant in a place I was at, which was very, very low for me, because again, I've never experienced that before. I've had friends who's done it the night before. And also I was let go at one job as well. And that was because, I'm gonna be very honest now, and I think when I graduated and I got offered that junior role, because I knew them very well, it was quite, I wouldn't say easy, but I felt a little bit I could coast through this and get why. And then I kind of got to a 2-year mark where I get bored very quickly sometimes. I'm just being very honest. And I think I got bored, and then I decided to sort of go to advertising. So I went, advertising was the first job, but then I went to another ad agency, which was quite a high profile ad agency. And I realized one thing you can't do is coast at a big ad agency, because you always get found out. And I did. And I think it was more, you know, just not taking it seriously. You know, I think I enjoyed maybe the lifestyle too much. It's, you know, going out, you know, obviously you've got like you've got full-time pay, you've got money, just not taking it seriously, if I'm really, really honest. And I think at the places I went to, different places I went out, met a lot of different people. I like meeting people, I like going out, and maybe I put that more at the forefront than actually wanting to better myself as a creative and learn more things. And then kind of as I kind of got a bit older and kind of going, say, past 4 or 5 years ago, I went to a decision kind of in my mind where I was like, you know what, I need to take this seriously. If I'm going to really make this work, I can't just keep, pissing around and just posting through and keep job hopping. And I told myself that actually I want to set a goal of going freelance in the next 2 years. And being freelance this year, I would like to say it was a planned thing, but it was a little bit to an extent, because without getting too clear, I'm getting married next year and I've just bought a house with my partner. There's a lot of life adult logistics in play. So to go freelance in the midst of a pandemic whilst planning a wedding and more, it just seems crazy. And the reason why I did it, if I'm being really honest, because it felt the right thing to do, but my brain thought that, well, I'm not the world's worst designer, and I've got some clients that I already have good relationships with already from side projects and self-directed. If I'm just proactive enough and can kind of keep myself at least, above water for, like, say, first month or 2 months, the rest will happen. I know that's a bit of a leap of faith, but I took that chance and it's been all right since then. So yeah, I went around a long way to answer your question there, but I don't know if that kind of covered.
I think it's really good to sort of to show and broadcast those. It's not about being, again, what we were just talking about there before that, about failure. Not being made redundant or being let go isn't the case for me, isn't about failure, because it's happened to me and I was, in a real bad place at those times, because, so many thoughts just start to flood into your mind, the initial shock, and just sort of like, oh, that's fine, I'll get a new job, to an hour later going, I've got to pay the mortgage, I've got to get kids' clothes, all those sorts of things. They all just sort of hit you straight away, don't they? And it's just panic. But I think for me personally, I wouldn't be where I'm at now if I hadn't gone through those experiences, because it really hardened me to make me understand what you need to do to sort of, to grow, to develop, to sort of survive, all those sorts of really key things. As opposed to it just being a big jolly where we're just making nice things.
No, far from it.
It can sometimes feel that way, can't it? Because it is, I think, for creative industries, it's shrouded in what we produce is really the main thing that people see and judge us on. But behind that, there's, it's like any other business. It's a working machine that needs to be sort of, tweaked and sort of looked after. So by opening yourself up and sort of sharing those things, I think that's really empowering for other people, maybe more than saying, oh, I've got a great job in an ad agency. I think it's really important for us to share those sort of experiences and give other people the realization that it doesn't have to be the end of the world. It's something that you come back stronger from.
Just on that, I was going to say as well, because that's also just very quickly touching on the failure part. I do give talks at unis, and I'm being really honest, that's why I enjoy giving talks at uni, more so because, being a Black creative, but also in a space where, people maybe say don't necessarily look like you in a space that you're at, and being confident to try and not saying I'm trying to champion it, but I think there's some experiences that I've got that hopefully can help people who say are graduates wanting to understand, well, if I feel very different to someone that I'm in a space with, it can still work, and I think that's where, because I've been in very awkward, difficult situations, say in pitch rooms, in boardroom meetings, where you want to say something, but you're just worried about, one, how that person will interpret it, but also, you're a junior, so what value could a junior bring to, say, beside 5 senior designers or creative director? It just feels very hierarchical, and so I try to give that experience back when I give talks at uni, which I think is, hopefully they value that maybe more than saying, I work with Adobe or whatever, because it just
I mean, they're good. I think they're good, like, sort of keynote things, aren't they, to sort of say, speak with Adobe, etc. You've worked in the industry for a while, you've gone freelance and built a selection of clients. I mean, they're good keynote things, aren't they? But I do honestly think that most people, I think the thing is with, like, say, younger people, they don't necessarily going to stand up and applaud your story, or they're going to, like, go and root you out and talk to you afterwards. But I know, deep down that they're silently taking that in, and that's really, really important, because you can just sort of, I think you can see in them as a spark that sort of makes everybody. We can all do it. We just need role models to show us the way, really. And whatever your background or heritage, we all need that. And it's really inspiring. Even for everybody. It's just great to hear. So you then go freelance. I ask this quite a lot because I'm really interested in the idea that you wake up that morning that you've decided to go freelance the day before.
Yeah. And
what does that really look like? You might have a few
and
and just money like raining out the sea. You sort of, you wake up and you go, right, shit, we need to actually ultimately going freelance is like ultimately starting a business, isn't it? You know, you're starting out, you know, you're going self-employed, however you structure it, you know, you might be solo or you might be as a limited, but you're sort of going into business for the first time, aren't you? You know, you're a young guy. What does that really look like? You know, like you say, you're getting married, you bought a house, your expectations, you know,
Yeah.
all
Do you
these
know
sort of things,
what?
those added outside pressures, they're a lot to deal with.
You know what's interesting? That morning, so I was in a so in December, I weirdly enough, I was offered a role somewhere, and it was good pay. I'm not gonna pretend it was good pay. It was, you know, the people were lovely, but again, my brain told me I always wanted to go freelance. So yeah, I handed in my notice actually, which seems crazy after a month. Again, in a new role, during the pandemic, but I did it. And that morning, let me get this right now. Yes, the day I handed in my notice, because I did it within a month, I didn't have to give a month's notice. It was, you know, within that probation period. Handed it in that same evening. I kid you not, I got an email from Adobe. Like I got my partner beside me, and Ben was, and I saw the email from Adobe, and it was basically, the email was to say, would you want to come on to do this Adobe Live thing for March and February, March, and just a bit of background for those of you who don't know, it's Adobe Live. They do online tutorials via Behance and YouTube where they kind of talk with creatives for 2-3 day period, and they look at your design process on a project. Now, when I got that email on the day I handed in my notice, I don't know what it was. The stars aligned. There was something just creepy about having, where it just felt like, well, this is clearly a sign of some sort. And like I said, I'm not going to pretend like I had no clients. I already had some relationships from before, and weirdly enough, I was doing a project in December, which it was a bit of freelance, but it was freelance, what I should say, but it continued into January and then into February. So that was I kind of had work straight away after I had left. But I think for me, the Adobe Live email was, you can't make this up, because I got that email like that same evening. It was just creepy. And when I got that, it just felt, you know, I was on a high, I'm not going to lie. And then I remember telling my mum, I was like, yeah, mum, I went officially freelance. And I always remember she said to me, oh, you're an idiot. And not because you've gone freelance, but because she knew that I was wanted to do this and it took me so long to do it. And I said to mum, I was like, well, you know, sometimes it takes a while to get to, you know, but I remember her saying that you're an idiot, because I thought, hang on, does she think I'm an idiot because I'm going freelance in a pandemic? But she's like, no, because I knew you always wanted to do this, but I just didn't know when you kept saying when you get older. I'm 30 now. Like, where's the older part? Like, you know, so yeah, to answer your question, for me, it was good times when I got that email, because it set me off. And again, I've just been more proactive, I think, more than ever, because now, you know, I'm my own business in the sense that you said, right? If I don't do things, nothing gets done. But also as well, I know now I can say work on, you know, on a Sunday night if I really want to, and have Monday morning off. You know, it's quite chilled in that regard. So yeah, it's okay.
So in the sense of, so the practical sense of finding clients, working through projects, delivering expectations, you know, client briefs, doing the actual work itself, do you have a process that you go through with that? So do you, if anybody's like thinking about going freelance themselves, I don't know, this is subjective for different people, but you sort of take on a project, have one at a time, and you sort of work through that until it's done and delivered, and then you move on to the next one. Do you sort of try and balance your schedule with multiple sort of projects? Obviously the talks with Adobe, that's a different sort of approach, isn't it? That's a completely different ball game for many people to understand. Even doing a talk like this, which is relatively small scale compared to, you know, the reach that Adobe has and its notoriety. Is there a set way, or do you just like to sort of let it just flow, you know, quite
No, I do you know what? I'm not gonna pretend like I'm a wing it kind of guy. Like I plan, I pre-plan, I even, you know, I've got Moleskine books, got calendar, but I think so currently right now, for example, I've got 5 jobs on at the moment, but that's spaced out between now and a few months. And it's more, I'm very good at, you know, one thing's from a very early age is that I'm very realistic with what I can do. You know, there's nothing worse than taking on more things than you can chew, but also saying you can deliver something and then it's half-hearted, or you deliver it late, because again, it kind of damages that relationship. One thing I've learned with freelancing is that and we kind of spoke before you even came on the call today, it's about the skill set, about what you can do as a designer, but also that human element of, you know, that human interaction and you know, being honest from the get-go. I think I'm very honest and transparent with the clients that I work with, and as a result, we've kind of built some really good relationships that I've got with, and some of them are actually based in the US now, which is weird because I've only been to the US once, and I think maybe because of Adobe bits and bobs that's led. But again, working with people say in the US to the UK, there is a difference with that as well. One being the time difference, so I have to have say Zoom calls at like 8 in the evening, which is like they're 2 o'clock. So there's that to get around, but also just culturally we're very different in the UK and the US, I think anyway. So I've had to kind of channel my brain into not to say my US hat, my UK hat on, but just understand everyone is different in that regards, and different people want different needs and so forth. So I think I'm very good at kind of like articulating and understanding what someone would need and when they need it for, and just being realistic of what I can deliver for them.
Yeah, I think that's really important. What we were talking about before, and you just touched upon again then. Again, for anybody that's tuning in, that's thinking about going freelance, or maybe just starting their journey themselves, that idea that you'd disclosed some details about what your personal interests are, which is obviously reflects on your personality and your identity, and others have picked up on that, and that led them to be drawn towards you. You think that's an important part of, especially the industry now, and even more so in freelance, because there's again the saturation of freelancers or startup agencies are big, throughout the whole structure. There's a lot of people doing great work, so there needs to be something. You need to maybe sort of just be a differentiator between you and another. Is that's proven important to you then, also, or that's been a helpful aspect to what you do?
I think so. I think even maybe more so now because pandemic, people are at home a lot more. People have more time to consume. Everyone does the occasional stalk. Let's be honest. Like we go on LinkedIn, we go on Instagram, we all do it. And I think it's more because I'm more aware that people are always searching you, or if you drop an email, they could probably find you very quickly online. Especially if you're a designer and you have a website and you have things, point of contact, interviews. It's very easy to know a lot about your personal life if you have it online. I think for me, I used to think there's always a line between social and work, but as a freelancer now, it does blur. And like I'm in a few websites where for like creators, if you want to hire for designers, and I'm on a website in particular called Black Who Creates, and it's for Black designers, for people of color designers. And it's funny because the person I'm working with now, for example, in the US, and it's a women's football newsletter for people of color. And she found me via the site. But the thing that stood me out, I think, from everyone else was, even though I've got my website link and I've got freelance graphic designer, I've put in there, I'm an Arsenal fan and I play FIFA, like I'm a bit of a gamer. And that, she mentioned that in the first email she reached out and said, oh, you're looking for a designer, but I also see that you're an Arsenal fan. And weirdly enough, I never had a client touch on that element before. And I thought, right, it just shows a bit more of who I am as an individual. And then when we had our first Zoom, we started talking about football because she's a Man City fan. And I think it was more, there was a good vibe from the very early on. We had a good vibe. I knew about her a little bit more, and so did me. And then obviously we then bring into the work and the deliverables and whatever. But I think when you're able to have that energy, especially when it's freelance, you need to kind of build a nice energy and rapport with whoever you're working with. It helps. It doesn't necessarily have to happen, but it does help the process be smoother. And I've learned that now. And I with all the clients I work with, some, obviously quite corporate, so it's difficult to have a relationship because it's deadlines and quick. But the majority of the ones I have now got a really good relationship, and we do a lot more stuff together continually as well, which is nice.
Maybe she was a Man City fan. She just felt sorry for you.
Well, you say that now, but Arsenal doing all right now. So
the first time we spoke, you were bottom of the league, I think.
That is very true. Last time we did speak, a lot's happened since then.
I had to get that in there. But I think also that it's really important, especially working for people like that, where obviously what she does is related to the sport. To have somebody that's has an understanding of it, subconsciously, for a long time. That's really important, isn't it? I say this quite a lot. I work with clients that I sort of, where possible, it's things that I have personal interest in, whether culture or different sorts of leisure facility activities. I find producing the work then much easier because I have an understanding of how that industry works, as opposed to sort of just maybe being plonked into one that's I have no understanding of. You can research it and try and develop ideas, but I think having that sort of subconscious appreciation of those things really helps, doesn't it? You can speak on the same sort of level. You can be a bit more of a friendship sort of relationship, more than just client, designer, isn't it? So I think it's
just on that as well. I was going to say, so one client I'm working with now, which reached out fairly recently, was Kick Out, which is a campaign about racism in football. Now, obviously, I'm a big football fan, so when this brief came out, it was just more, I do a lot of editorial and book covers and create magazines, but with this, it's a report, but it's more, like I said, because it's touching on something that I generally find interesting. Yeah, of course it's work, but I mean, having fun with it. And I think, you know, I try and have fun, obviously, with a lot of projects I do. And, you know, sometimes you got to just churn it out. But I think when I'm able to have fun with it, and because I generally can resonate with it, that's when I produce my best work. If I'm being honest. So yeah, just to echo what you were saying before.
Yeah, definitely. And moving on to the talks. Obviously, you do the Adobe one, but I've seen you do quite a number of other, you know, involved in other sort of ways up the back to university and other Q&As and other sort of type public speaking events like this. You've done a few. I've seen that on your Instagram page that you've been involved with Creative Boom and people like that. Do you find that that is now a way of standing a bit taller than others, and not in a sort of necessarily better as a creative, but just by cutting through the noise, like we were saying earlier, there's a lot of saturation, so it allows your voice to be heard a bit more. People then become they can reach out to you because they want to work with you or just get involved in other ways. Has that given you, you know, an extra sort of strength to your bow, so to speak?
I'll be honest, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, things like Adobe Live, obviously, that because again, because it was a very early start of my freelance career, it definitely fed into a lot of the clients I've got now, especially the ones that are US based, because obviously Adobe big reach. Things like Creative Boom is interesting because I was connected with them even when I was at uni. So I think when I was at uni, I was very, again, especially when I graduated, even though I had that first job straight away, I was still sharing my work with so many blogs. It's nice that Creative Boom, loads of them, like to ridiculous amounts, and getting no responses back. And it's only now maybe some are kind of coming back to me, and it's nice. But I think it's more, yeah, it's some of it's been organic, some of it I have reached out, but I think now as a result of when I'm featured on these blogs, they do help with the work front. To answer your question in terms of being a bit different when you're on it, I'll be lying if I said you know, by being featured on these platforms, of course you stand out because these are big platforms and people are viewing it. But I think more so it allows me to, when, say for example, a university sees that I've been featured on something, if they reach out to me via that, that's great, because then I can able to give back my experiences via the university, and they've come because they see me featured somewhere else. If I wasn't featured, they may not have seen me, and then I lose out on giving talks to university, to students and grads. So I mean, yeah, I think for that I enjoy it. But also as well, like the hosting and the Adobe side of it, it's gonna sound like a really weird thing, but I kind of get a buzz from doing like the hosting and the interviews, because I think it's more, believe it or not, I know it's gonna sound crazy, I do get shy, which it might not come across as that, and I do, but I think it's more, even when, like, say for example, Adobe Max, which was a fairly big talk I gave, I was absolutely bricking it, sweaty palms, like super nervous, but I think it was more the buzz when you're actually in it and you're doing it, you're like, okay, cool, well, I've tested myself to that limit, I can do it. Then what's the next, do you know what I mean? I think it's just more once you, almost like a sink or swim kind of thing. Once you're in it, you're in it.
Yeah, and also that's a horses for courses, but I think a lot of creative people get to whether it's an age or just a point in their career, and it's nice to sort of stay within the industry, because sometimes I used to think, if I'm not a designer, what do I do? What can I do to stay in it? You know, if I sort of, you know, maybe want to sort of mix it up, or just get bored of the day-to-day designing and dealing with clients and all the other things that go with that. But those sort of things, that's really exhilarating. I think it's sort of, you know, it really sort of, it's a way of giving back. It's a way of sort of sharing insight and knowledge, but it's also a way of just keeping yourself on the ball. You get to meet so many great people.
Amazing, yeah, complete. I mean, that, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's once you're featured on these things and you go. I mean, also it's amazing even just being alongside other people who are doing incredible things in that space. And it's about, you know, it's not a case of just putting your work out there and having it featured and sharing it on your Instagram. It's more, yeah, you do that, of course you do that, but also you can see other creatives in that space. And, you know, Creative Boom, like you mentioned, I mean, they're an incredible platform, and, you know, they've got so many other creatives that, you know, I'm inspired by, and I think it's more, you keep yourself current and fresh by just looking at what's there, you know.
Yeah, but I think there's also an argument in that. When I was first started out, there was always this tendency for the people I work with, it was like, we don't really speak to any of the creators because they might steal our work, or they might judge us, or they might do things that I don't think they ever were going to. I think it was just an imagination of the people that run those places. But like in today's world, I think it's so much more open, isn't it? In terms of, like, there's people working in so many different niches, or working in even in graphics, but they might be working with specific clients, or they do a very sort of a small part of the bigger cock. By being on all those platforms, it shows you how open the industry is to just sort of wanting to improve the world through design and creativity, as opposed to maybe monopolizing things and just being like, just the leader of the pack, so to speak. There's a place for us all, and I think that those platforms, whether it's magazines or podcasts or things like this, I think it just really, really makes me feel quite proud to be part of this industry. Maybe for the first time in a long time, maybe realise that there's so much great work going on that we should all just be celebrating and sort of, just sharing a bit more love, I think.
But it's so small as well. Like I mean, obviously it's massive, but it's not, if that makes sense. Like I think maybe more pandemic, lockdown, we're at home, whatever. It's when you go on, especially LinkedIn, it's probably, I don't know if you find it as well, it's so often that you have mutual friends, or at least one mutual friend of another creative that you're inspired. Because again, it's connecting, especially if you're proactive in our space. If it's graphic design, fine art, illustration. If you're proactive, I feel like, you are probably one friend away from knowing the next person, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's why I really enjoy it, because I love meeting new people as a result of the work I do as well. So yeah, for me, it's great.
Yeah, I think I found out breaking down the concept of networking.
Yes.
Creatives, that's really important, because again, I was brought up this idea that we don't do networking because it's a corporate thing.
Yeah.
In theory, everybody does it. You can jazz it up and call it whatever you like, but it's still networking at the end. And I think that's really important, is that idea, like by things like LinkedIn, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I find it allows us to start conversations and be part of other conversations, more than just sharing work. I mean, that's great as well. You get to see what other people are doing. But just people to be able to, I like to openly talk about my experiences and what I'm going through at any given point. And then to hear someone else say, oh, well, this is the first time I've mentioned it, or I've felt like that as well, or, this is who I've spoke to, or what I've done to get through it. Or, it could be a lot of different things, whether it's mental health or self-doubt, all the way through to how to start a business in creative industries, who to speak to, and all those sort of things. It is just like a network without being in a space with other people. You just do it digitally. And I think it's really invaluable, those sorts of conversations, because I think you maybe just sort of, you'll be stuttering all the way through it unless you sort of get, knowledge and insight from others. And that's what, again, this is what this is supposed to be about, is to help people, take that leap, or to guide them through different things just by hearing how you or anyone else has done it in future or in the past. It's helped me personally, just to understand, a lot of different things that I've been stuck on. So, I think a lot of this sort of stuff is we all sort of made to believe that LinkedIn is maybe a negative thing because it's about business people sending illicit messages on, private messages.
Well, though, but it's interesting you mentioned, because I guess it's so easy to get tunnel vision as well. I mean, you said as well about the idea of even the word networking. I remember I've got a good friend of mine, Olga, who I work with, and I remember when we would go to so to go back a bit further, I work with a creative of mine, Olga, and we used to when we could, because of COVID, go to events via Westminster City Council, and they would invite us to these events, and it was the reason we went to them was because it allowed us to give talks at schools in the borough. Now, when we went there, even the word networking, I don't know what it was. It just something just felt very Apprentice. I mean, I love The Apprentice, BBC One, but it was just felt very cheesy, cutthroat. Just not really for me. Networking, the idea. I mean, networking is basically just meeting people and having a good chat and understand if you can resonate. And I think it was more when you break down that stigma of what you think networking is. Things like LinkedIn, it's not a creative thing, of course not, but it is very much utilized in the creative space. So stripping away, you do get those like generic, jobs that come all the time on inbox and stuff. But putting that to a side, there's a lot of creatives that you can find and collaborate and network with it. So
I think you've got to find, with something like networking, you've got to find a like-minded community, haven't you? So like my LinkedIn, for instance, I don't think there's hardly anybody on there that isn't creative, because I'm generally not that interested in what I use it to meet other people, other like-minded people. I mean, I could set up another profile and it'd all be aiming at trying to find work, but I don't really want to use it for that, because I feel like I'm selling myself to the devil, so to speak. So you've got to use it in your own right. And that's the same with like, I used to go to B&N. I don't know if that's in London as well, but I think it's quite global. But that was traditionally double glazing salesman, estate agents, your AN typical high street sort of type services, and they were always just trying to flog you stuff, because that's all they knew. They were salespeople. And then I found a few more creative based networking groups before COVID, and that was great because it was more of a social thing. it's just that network is just the easy way to sort of classify it, isn't it? Really, categorize it.
All very Delbo like a little bit, isn't it? I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
It's like trying to sell you a fool's advertisement. But...
Yeah. Well, you're just getting thrown business cards at you as soon as you walk in. Yeah, out of Vista business cards. But that's the way it goes, isn't it? But that's how their world operates. It's not, it's not for me to judge that. But anyway, going back to the point, if anybody else was thinking about going freelance, Kieron, is there anything, or any tips or advice you'd give them? It feels like, listening to your story, that it was meant to be, and there's some sort of rebellious punk in there. Yeah. Like this, doing the collaborative work, didn't like being told what to do, always had a bit of a vision for going freelance and turning down quite a good paid role to just jump into it. There was obviously something in the stars there, I think, that led you to that. But for anybody that was maybe a bit hesitant, or is maybe thinking about it but unsure how to do it, is there anything that you'd advise that they could potentially do to sort of help them along the way?
Do you know what? It's a tricky one, because I always think you have to, the grass seems always greener, let's be honest. And I think with freelance, there is a lot of pros, of course there is, but for example, when I did go freelance, as though this story or this journey might sound super smooth, I had to really, really think about, if things went bad, can I still survive? Can I still pay rent? Can I do all these things? And, I had to really contemplate these kind of things. And I think for yourself as advice, I'd always say, does it feel like the right thing to do? And if it does, give yourself that period where maybe it's 1 or 2 months that you do it, and then you see how you kind of go on from there. And also tap into people who are freelancing. I mean, when I did go freelance, I went to a good friend of mine who, when I was at a full-time placement, he was a freelancer there, and he's a really good guy. And I remember having we had a Zoom call the night before I handed in my notice, because I knew I was going to go freelance. And I said to him, can you kind of give me tips about how did you secure your clients? Even right down to accountants and finances, all these elements. And yeah, I basically picked his brains, and he was amazing. And I almost think to myself, like, yeah, of course I could have had the experience by learning on myself, but tapping into someone who's already in that space, it definitely helps to use that. And also sometimes, challenging, and this is a tricky one, because if you do go into freelance, you'll find it's very easy to become the yes person, because you just want to take on work. But once you're in that space, and say you have your first client, understanding, they've approached you hopefully, for some work, or vice versa. And when you're in that space, being comfortable enough to challenge the client. I think now I'm at a point where, because I've got a good, strong client base, I do challenge the clients when I can. More so because I think it's best that once we have that kind of boundary crossed, we're both going to produce our best work. So yeah, it's just to kind of answer to that question. There's elements of that, but I think it's understanding, is this the right thing for you? And if it is, giving yourself that period of time to grow, because it doesn't come overnight. It's not something that, is a quick thing. It can take a while to kind of build that element of it. So yeah.
Amazing. So sounds like a great place to leave it. And I really appreciate it. I think it's great advice. For anybody that wants to find you, connect online, what's the best places and handles and all the rest of it to find?
Well, I said we're plugging LinkedIn a lot, so maybe you can find me on LinkedIn. So my website, KieronLewis.com, you can find me on there, which has all my latest projects. Instagram as well, I'm quite active on that, Kieron Anthony L. And then yeah, LinkedIn again, Kieron Lewis. So I'm quite active on the fairly social media front. And again, like I said, I give talks at unis, and any sort of advice that I can kind of help with, especially for grads as well, because I'm always keen on talking to grads, because 8 years ago I graduated, but I still feel fairly fresh in that regards. So reach out, DM me, slide to DMs, email. I'm fairly happy to reply back. So yeah.
Brilliant, super. Well, I'm off to buy some shares in LinkedIn.
Yeah.
No, I really appreciate that, Kieron. It's been great to hear your story, and this is the abrupt bit where we end it for all. But we'll have to catch up soon, and have a great rest of the day, and good luck with the wedding.
Cheers, buddy. Take care.
Nice one. Take care. Ta-ra. Thank you.
Bye.